presenting on behalf of the company that I founded and that I work at, which is EonMinds, and we're developing this expert AI assistant to help with intellectual property. And I myself are an R&D product manager in MedTech, so I've gone through this process many times. All these people that come with napkin sketches when I was working in academia, especially, and then having to interface with the tech transfer offices, deciding what needed to be patented, whether it was worth it or not. And mostly from the cost perspective, when you don't have a lot of money at the beginning and you need to spend all of it in legal fees to get a patent, and you're debating whether it's worth it or not and how far in to go. So that is my background. And, I know we have the poll, but my assumption here, I'm going to go on a hunch, is that 100% of you have worked on patented technology. This is the type of forum where everybody, one way or another, whether you're doing marketing or packaging or regulatory or anything, everybody here, unless you're very young, have touched on patented technology throughout your career. And that's because medtech patents dominate. So the first category for the most number of patents is electric elements, which is as vague as it can get. So that one's number one. Second one is medical and veterinary science. So it seems like it is the highest in terms of an application. A lot of electrical patents, there's overlap between these classifications. So you can be class, for example, A61 and H01. So a lot of the electrical patents are also medtech patents. And then you can see that, almost, less than half of the following one is vehicles. So vehicles, which is, everything, is less than medtech and life science and these combined. So it's more than 10% of the total patent classifications. There's more than 100 classes. So it's good to be number second. It means that it's a very innovative space, and this is something very important for this industry. Another good thing to know is that medium and small companies, they are in a minority. That's companies under 500 employees, but they're growing. So it's been, consistently growing over time. That's people like us. So we're, more and more over time filing more of the patents. And I think part of it, in my view, is due to the cost and other limitations. I think that's what prevents more small companies from having more patents and competing against large companies who, in many cases, file 10 cases for a single invention because they can afford it. So with that, I'll go on another hunch, which is who has filed a patent effortlessly. And maybe not everybody on the call. I mean, even though everybody has probably worked on a patent, maybe not everybody has filed one. But I'm almost certain that if you have, it has been hard. And it's supposed to be hard. I mean, it is, you are becoming an inventor of something and you're going to get a monopoly for 20 years. But maybe it is hard in not the ways that you expect, not technically hard, but operationally hard. And that's because a patent typically costs about $50,000. If you have a good attorney that and you can provide them good information, maybe you can negotiate it for less. But 50,000 is a reasonable estimate. Most people come back to me and say, I spend more. I've spent 100. It's almost unlimited the amount of money you can spend. It's very slow. It takes about 2.5 years. Now, that is not on the related legal fees. That's just the patent office has a backlog of about 2 million patents. And so good luck getting on that list. They've approved a system where you can fast track it, but then you have to pay more money and you have to basically examine it yourself. So not a lot of people do it because you're trying to get the patent, and that doesn't help your case unless you have a very strong case. And then they're unreliable. I think the worst part about having to pay $50,000 and wait 2.5 years is that if you actually make it and you become successful and someone doesn't like your patent, you're very unlikely to be able to enforce it. And a lot of the claims will get struck down. So the majority of the cases, a vast majority of the cases, the patents get struck down. And the reason for that is that when you're filing and prosecuting a patent with a patent office, the examiner has about 20 to 40 hours for your case. So they'll be able to do some research, look a few references and say, hey, what you're doing is not novel or it's obvious, And then you'll argue back and forth, and then you'll usually find some way of protecting it. And then if you're lucky and your patent is really valuable and your company becomes very valuable, and then someone, you want to sue somebody, or someone's like, oh, this, I want to operate in that space, they'll litigate or appeal. And what happens there is that instead of an examiner that has 40 hours to look at your case, you have 40 lawyers that have 400 hours to look at your case, and they'll find something, right? And they'll find something and they'll invalidate it, or they'll say, hey, there's an inventor that you missed, or they'll find a reason for that. And so you go through this whole process, and I think everybody, becomes pretty discontent with it. But every time you pitch as a startup, the investor's going to ask, what are your patents? Let me look at them. Let me read through them, and it's part of it's part of their diligence. So you can't get around it. So we're stuck in this cycle that is, I think unproductive. I think what we want to do is innovation and technology, and so that's why we started EonMinds. It's a large market as well. There's a few software companies that you probably have never heard of unless you're a patent attorney. And if you have, you're probably dissatisfied with them to some level. It's enterprise level software that is, complicated to use. But they have huge valuations, and they're basically, keyword search engines with some AI and some, market analytics, and they do some stuff. I mean, some are better than others, but they have about, huge valuation, a small chunk of the market, but it is expected to grow the fastest. So going forward, software is going to eat a chunk of the market, and that's because of the rise of AI that can start providing services now. And I think that'll be a good thing. Hopefully that, translates into savings for us and higher quality value for us as the innovators of MedTech, and that's what we're trying to do. There's a few different levels of stakeholders, but the smaller portion is the patent attorneys. They care about different things that the portfolio managers, which is kind of my position as a tech innovator and R&D manager. And then tech innovators is the vast majority of people, and those are the ones who need access to these services. And it kind of goes in a pyramid where the tech innovator goes through an R&D manager who decides what to do with it, and then the attorney is mostly filing and doesn't really provide insight into whether this is good for marketing or anything. They're just like, do you want it? I'll file it. So the portfolio manager does that marketing insight, and then the tech innovator provides the technical content. Now, a case study that I thought I'd present with what we've been able to do with EonMinds. And this is a small company. Blue Physics is about 5 employees. They make a radiation dosimetry device, one of the best. And they wanted the freedom to operate search for a technology that they're working with a university. It was Virginia Commonwealth University, and they're going to do a joint development of R&D. And they wanted to know, is there anything in this space? Are we going to be infringing? Is this, are we free to move on into the space? And so with our platform, it's going to cost about $100. In this case, we did it for free because we're testing the software, and so we have. But we'll charge $50 to $100 for the search. It's computationally very expensive, so it's a high cost to actually run these searches and read a lot of text. You get your results back in about 10 minutes, and you get an explanation for every patent. You can interact with every document, and so they were pretty happy with what they got. They can do it themselves. They understand the technology better than anybody, and that's what we provided Marcos from Blue Physics, and he was really happy with it. And the reason I want to show this is that the lawyers quoted him at $10,000 for this, for something that they don't understand the technology the way he does, right? So they're not going to understand the risk of infringement the way that he does. They're not going to put as many hours as he would if he needed to. And then all the learnings that they get, they don't go anywhere. But if you're the chief of operations or the CEO or the CTO of your company, and you actually understand the IP landscape, then you can use that in your practice as a technical person. So we saved him about 2 weeks of time, about $10,000. And yet actually, the reason we know this is he had paid for a previous search. So we know how much he spent, and we know how much it took him. And we know that the results that he got with us were equal to the results that he got from his lawyers, if not better, because he just got a bunch of PDFs and a short summary. And we were able to send him a whole spreadsheet with explanations for every single patent. And that's what we aim to assist professionals, is not just with the search. I think search is part of it, and we're growing the database, but it currently can search all active US patents from 2005 to today. So that allows you to do freedom to operate searches. But we want you to chat with patents so you can understand them, the same way as you would with ChatGPT in a document, ask questions, compare them, contrast them. We want you to be able to draft patent applications. If you're in a crunch and you need a provisional, drop in your information, drop in the publication that you're going to publish and get a draft out of it, file it quickly. A lot of these activities are to support lawyers and patent attorneys, but there's no reason why we can't support innovators. And the other one is office actions. You will get your patent rejected by the patent office. And it's a strategy that some attorneys follow, which is try to be broad, get rejected, and then try to be narrow. But it costs money and it costs time to do it. So we would try to reduce the amount of cost and time that would take. And finally, clerical research. And this is especially important when you're trying to look through, hundreds of documents of prosecution history documents back and forth between the examiner. This is more of a lawyer thing, but It's like hundreds of documents of 30 to 300 pages each, and that are not searchable because they're like scanned PDFs. And so we're able to load those into the database and ask questions for them, and that saved some people a lot of time. And the goal is to fill in that gap that the other IP service companies have created, which is a low cost, low quality software. We want to be low cost and high quality, right? And so we want to be able to support that quadrant over there and bring everybody, not just I think we mostly have here innovators, but also the search experts, the agents and attorneys. We want to bring them all into a higher quality, lower cost practice. And increasing that speed to value is what we believe gives everybody a competitive advantage. And we're all in the service industry, so we all understand that the more money you spend, the more time you spend, the higher the quality that you're going to get. And we're trying to make that, we're trying to lower the time it takes to do things, and therefore the cost and increase of quality that we can get. And I'll just walk through a few capabilities so that you can all criticize me later. One is the deep patent search. So you can search in natural language. You don't need to use keywords. I don't know if any of you have had to search for patents, but Google Patents it's bad. You have to search for keywords. You have to read through 10 pages. It's not great. And it's not better than the USPTO search engine or any other search engines. And it's not really comparable to the AI search engines. They're not very good either. So we've created this natural language search engines. It takes a while. But it takes a while because it's computing a lot. So it'll perform multiple levels of search through the database that we have, and it will read the top 100 to 400 patents for you, and it will provide you a summary for them. Now that takes 5 to 10 minutes, but you do get good results. The goal here is that you don't need to be a search expert. You don't need to know how to use keywords, like catheter, near, vascular 5, and things like that, where you have to code these things and manage how you search to find something. Is that you can throw in your idea there and it'll be able to find stuff that's relevant for you and tell you why it is. It's all contained into a single interface, so it all emanates from this patent chat where you can ask questions like you would in ChatGPT, but it has the back end of the patent database and all these other functions. So all these functions like the drafting, the search, the office actions, they're all accessible from this interface, and you can combine them. And I'll show you why it's relevant later. But the chat here is, hey, someone told me this patent could be relevant. I don't really have the time to look at it. Here's the patent number. Here's what I do. Can you tell me what you think? Can you tell me, am I infringing? Is this novel? Is this not? So you can ask those questions very quickly. You can design around if you want that. You can put in a patent and say, hey, how can I design around this? So it's very open-ended, and we want it to be open-ended. The reason is, a lot of these IP SaaS companies, they'll have interfaces that you need to learn. I think that's a barrier to entry. That's our belief is like, if we want to make this accessible to lawyers and to innovators, then we need to be able to address the different levels of expertise and the different functions that people have. So we're trying to make it open-ended so that you ask your question and depending on the more you know, the more detailed it'll become, but it doesn't prevent people from using it regardless of your level of expertise. Another interesting one that we're working heavily on right now and getting it reviewed by a MedTech colleague of mine who's a patent agent with thousands of patents, and he says it's pretty good, so I'll take his word for it. It's the drafting. So you can put in an invention disclosure. Again, the more information you provide, the better. I've had people here that put one line and they expect to get a great draft. This is just not how it works, right? You need to be inventive and you need to really have invented something. A lot of people have ideas and they think they can patent them. It's hard to be an inventor. It needs to be novel and non-obvious, and that's not always the case. So in this case, you can attach an invention disclosure, and it produces every part of the text that you need, other than the figures, which the AI can't handle, but we have designers that can manage that when people need that. I think the cool thing about it is that it's connected to the search. And so this is important because it's sometimes, and I don't know what everybody's experienced it, but it's discouraged for you to do a search and then to file a patent. And the reason is, if you're legally mandated to disclose what's out there that is out there. And so some people, in order to get around the patent office more easily, they'll say, well, I don't know what's out there, so I'm not going to help the examiner, right? Because I'm not going to tell them what I think is relevant, so they have like something to start from. And so that you're discouraged from even searching when you're filing. Now, that leads also to the fact that every patent gets invalidated later because obviously someone's going to find something. And so the approach of merging that search and that draft is to try to address these not just the rejections that you get by the patent office, but just generally best practices, which is, hey, this is what's out there, and you can feed it in the same interface. You can run a search, put your invention, say, hey, can you draft around these that are very relevant, right? Like, can you make sure that it doesn't, that we're not just not infringing, but that it's novel, that it's open, that it's not obvious, and that it's going to get through. And that mix between the drafting and the search in a single interface, not having to search and then do the drafting. There's some drafting tools, word plugins, etc. But having it in the same interface allows you to interact with the search and what exists out there to make sure that you're carving out your space properly and that you can expand the scope of your claims where you can, but that you also restrict the scope of your claims where you have to. And then finally, office action responses. That's after you've filed your patent and you wait for 2 years because those 2 million patents that are ahead of you on the line, you'll get a review, and that review is usually a rejection, and sometimes it's a final rejection, and that's fine. You can file a request for a continuous examination, and it's not that final, and but it spooks people. So the goal here is just to assist with that when the rejections come in, and this is a more complex one. We're still working on it, but it's being able to pull out the reason for the rejection, being able to pull out the prior art. This takes the attorneys a long time, so the fact that we can just do that is already streamlining their process. Our goal there is that translates into savings for you. That if they can do it in 2 hours instead of 10 hours, that those invoices will come down. But then as an innovator, if you're an independent inventor and you decide to file your own, we want to be able to support you as well. And then I'm going to talk about this because I get a lot of questions, so maybe I'll bring it up before I get them. It's doesn't ChatGPT already do this? It does not. So it's actually really hard to do. We had true AI engineers working, preparing that database so that it is searchable, making sure that the data is connected in a way that it doesn't hallucinate, it doesn't make stuff up, and so you need to design it in a way that I think it'll be easier to explain in this group why this is not ChatGPT, because I'm sure all of you have tried ChatGPT for the work that you do, and you've realized that it's good for some things, and then when you really need expertise, it's terrible. And so you find the same thing in the patent space. It can't search for anything. And then the advice that it gives you, it referenced the wrong document, or it makes a document up, or it's outdated because it was trained, 6 months ago on some data, and so it doesn't have the most recent stuff. And so there's all sorts of reasons why it's not, ChatGPT can't handle this. ChatGPT is just a foundation. It's mostly a foundation model. So you can use it as your backend for a tool like the one we're building, which we're not using other tools, but our tool is multimodal, connects a lot of information together, has databases that have cost us a lot of money to compute. You have to pre-compute the patent database to make it searchable, and that takes a month and a lot of money and a lot of compute. So ChatGPT doesn't have that, and not a lot of people have that. What makes us unique is a few things. One is that our search architecture is very developed. It's not just semantic search. I don't know if anybody's familiar with AI, but it's not just semantic search where you have your typical vector embeddings and it's just some math. There's multiple layers of search to it. So it's not fast, but it is good. And we think that, you can wait 5 minutes to get better results instead of, keyword search that is instant. And then you need to spend 10 hours reading through everything. So we want to save you the 10 hours, but you're going to have to wait a little bit on the front end. The other is the agentic architecture. Building a single interface is more difficult than putting buttons and having functions, being like, hey, put text here and click go. Like if you want to have that free interface and there's bugs that come out because of that, there's routing that goes wrong. So there's a lot of development effort involved in making that agent really stable and giving you the best answers. We adopt open code. We're pretty good about, we don't want to get married to any providers. We try to we want to make it lean, not charge a lot of money. So we're using different tools that, obviously without stealing anybody's IP, IP protection is super important. And part of that is actually not having providers that steal your data. And so most of the open code is free. It's up for grabs. You get it, you put it in your server and you're ready to go. And so we leverage a lot of that instead of depending on other people's infrastructure, which we don't have a control over, and security becomes a concern there. And the fourth part is user instruction. We think that the user interface based in this AI world is going to change. It's going to become these assistants where you can sort of ask anything. So we even have plugins for audio, which will hopefully you'll get at some point in the future. But being able to just interact like as you would with a human and have it become a real assistant and not a bunch of UIs and buttons and things that you need to click and learn that are very specific to what you do, but don't translate to everybody's practice. And I just wanted to give a shout out to my colleague Stefano, who's not on the call, I believe, but he's been the brains of this. We both met at Georgia Tech about 10 years ago. We've stayed in touch. He's a great AI guy, worked for the Department of Defense. He knows what he's doing, and he's been great to work with. So yeah, that concludes it. Hopefully, I get a bunch of tough questions.
Before we move to the questions, I wanted to show this other quiz that I was unable to launch, but this was something that I made up this morning. And this was sort of to help me understand the conversation going into it. And I think that it helps frame it for everybody else. What is the primary purpose of patents? Choose all that apply. Hint, it's all of the above or all of the below. And the goal is to incentivize innovation by granting temporary monopoly rights, which I found very interesting. Um, I did not know that. Disseminate technical knowledge by publishing innovations, encourage investment in R&D, reward innovators and protect their intellectual property, and promote overall economic growth through innovation. So, even though you can't do the poll question, I thought it would be a good um, foundation for the conversation and any questions that you may have for Ignacio about their particular platform and how you can engage with him or with his platform. So I will open it up and I'm going to call on people just because I'm mean. And I'm going to start with Jose.
I knew it. No, I'm glad because I might be the only person on this call outside of Ignacio who's actually tried this, and I was the one who asked Sean to bring on Ignacio because I saw this and I thought it was pretty cool. I think one of the wonderful things about ChatGPT and Grok and Claude and all of the LLM chatbots or chat tools is that they've kind of made people aware of what's possible with AI. But one of the downsides is that the hallucinations that result from improper prompting and that kind of thing, or just the nature of the tools, make a lot of people think that it's unreliable in essence. And the truth of the matter is that if you build a system correctly, it can be very reliable, which is what Ignacio and his team have done. But yeah, I think I'm glad you sort of preempted that because I think that's probably the biggest top of mind concern that people have, especially for something like this, is like, well, is it going to hallucinate? And I mean, you can run the experiment if you play around with ChatGPT with patent type of stuff, and then you go actually look them up, you'll find that a pretty good percentage of the time is like, wait, that patent doesn't exist. The tools are getting better, but yeah, I mean, and Ignacio, I don't know if you'd want to share a little bit more details about what it is that you guys have done that enables you to be certain that you're not getting bogus data or hallucinations.
Yeah, the important thing there is it's like scientific research is citations, references, right? Like we don't make stuff up. Like every piece of information that we present, we've instructed the model to follow the actual source of the information. So that if you're talking about a specific patent, the information that is being fed is the information of that patent. And then you can also tune the parameters of the model so that it doesn't become very creative. Like, we don't want it to be very creative. We want it to be responsive. So I'd say having that back end of the search database is really what makes this strong. Having good prompting with a very specific instruction on what to do and what not to do is also good. If you don't tell it what not to do, sometimes there's no reason why it wouldn't do it. And so it's narrowing the prompting really to what you need. It's creating that agent that chooses the prompting depending on what you want to do, so that it's not just open-ended, but it's targeted to what you're looking for. And then it's having the ability to retrieve the original documents, and not being very strongly instructed to not deviate from the original content. And we have found that it doesn't. I mean, it's very good at it picks text. These reasoning models now are very good. We always ask the model to explain why. So we break down the thinking so that even if it does make a mistake and you believe that it has, we've broken down the thinking for you. There's a drop down on the chat that you can follow what it did. And sometimes, if it didn't do what you wanted it to do, you can either change the instruction or maybe send down the wrong path. But yeah, I think what's important is having documentation to support it. I think that's important. I mean, everybody in medtech would know. I mean, you're filing a 510(k) or whatever. I mean, you need documentation to support what you're saying. So that's what we provide the model, right? Is all the documentation it needs to support, and it's not easy to do, right? Because how much do you provide? How much is too much? Can the model really consume all of that? It's expensive to consume a lot of tokens and a lot of words, but engineering that is what makes us different.
I'd like to explore the origin story a little bit. Like let's go back to Ignacio as a small child dreaming of having a patent platform one day. Um, how did we get from age 7 and playing with teddy bears to where we are today?
Yeah, I mean, that can be very long. But I mean, I always wanted to be an inventor. It was just, growing. I mean, I'm an engineer, and I liked inventing stuff. So I thought patents were the coolest thing. And then when I actually had to do them, like draft them and file them, I'm like, this is horrible. This is a very painful process. It's really expensive. I've just spent all these hours trying to search with keywords, which is honestly nobody does anymore. It's kind of going back in time. It's like it feels like you're using this, old library software. The interfaces are old, and I was just pulling my hair off and being like, "Is this what has become of inventing?" It's very sad that the stuff you're working on is super cool, and the tools to protect it are terrible and old. And lawyers are at the end of the day, they're a lot of them are patent attorneys at least have technical expertise, but they're never going to know more than you do. I mean, but that's with everything, right? Like you're going to understand your product better than anybody else, and you're going to understand your technology better than anybody else. So you're basically lawyers are playing a translation game. Because one thing that I learned too is they don't really tell you, they don't really know whether it's patentable or new or not. So they'll just do what you tell them. Like you want to file, they'll file. It's going to cost you a lot of money, and you might be wasting your time and your effort. They'll do a really good job at filing, but they can't give you the market advice and the strategic advice. So I found myself in a situation where, I had a very good mentor who was a patent agent. So I worked with him and I saw how to do it the right way and the efficient way and all the pitfalls of it. And then all these LLMs came out. And I thought, awesome, like this is great. I was a product manager doing patents and some regulatory, some precepts at the time, and I'm like, I'm gonna use these things and they're great. The first ChatGPT was bad, 3.5 was terrible. I'm like, okay, I'll give the second one a chance. Still bad. I mean, what can I say? It hallucinates, makes stuff up. You can't really use it for anything. It drafts claims like the wrong way. It's just not well done. Like anybody can read it and say, when you read something and it's AI. Well, that was happening to me when I was doing patents. And so I thought I called Stefano, who was working on this for the Department of Defense, working on language models, and he had been at Los Alamos previously working on the same thing. So he knew what he was talking about. And I told him, why is this not working? And can we get it to work? And he said, yeah, you need an AI engineer. It's not just a model that you can give to someone to actually build the infrastructure for it. And I'm like, can we do it? And he said, yeah, we can do it. So he left his job and did it, which was great. So I'm very grateful for him to have done that. I've paid for it, so I feel like it's a fair split. We've um and yeah, that's the origin story. And I'm pretty happy actually with where we got it. It's better than me. And that to me has been awesome, to see the system and be like, I need to talk to a lawyer. I can't like but not in the sense of like I need, not in a bad way, but like someone needs to tell me like if this is good at this point, because to me it reads perfectly. I mean the claim structure read perfectly. And I'm like, oof, like do I not know what I'm doing, or is this thing really gotten there? And then so I did show it to a patent agent, and he agrees. He's like, yeah, the claim structure is perfectly written. Now, whether that's what you want to protect or not is a different question, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that because you can write it, you can write it in perfect, maybe you can translate perfectly to Spanish, but you're saying there, if you're saying dumb stuff, you'll be saying it in a different language. And so it's important that you still have an idea of what is invented. And this is part of
That
what we're
was
working on now, actually.
hilarious, Ignacio. Do you mind if I use that line from time to time?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and I think what we're working on now with this patent agent, what he said is you need to start getting human in the loop. You need to start getting like you need the AI to start working with the innovator to extract what is truly novel. Because the example he gave is my wife's hairdresser came to me once and said, I have this great idea, and he's a patent agent. So he's like, I have this great idea. Can you file a patent for me? And he told her like, this is not this is not patentable. This is not something you want to spend money on. Even if I file it for you for free, the patent office is still going to charge you like, $2,000 between the filing and the examination and the prosecution and blah, blah, blah. And then the fees that you need to pay, you're still going to have to spend, 2 to 5 grand or whatever. And plus a lot of time for something that is like, it was really not it's just an idea that you don't need a patent for. And so there's a lot of people out there who think that that's their golden ticket. They have a great idea. They're going to patent it. And so we need to protect for that. And I think part of protecting for that is adding that human in the loop that doesn't just follow your instruction, which a lawyer would. You could show up at a legal office and say, hey, can you protect this? They might think it's a dumb idea, but I mean, pay by the hour, so I might as well file it. And so I think we want to put that in there and say, hey, don't don't protect this. It's a bad idea. It's not gonna get through. And maybe you've paid us $200, but you've saved yourself, 2 years and $5,000 and all the headache.
Edward.
Hi, Ignacio. It nothing personal. It sounds like you're not from the States
No,
originally.
yeah,
And I'm based in the UK, and I'm not from here originally. What's interesting is what I really like about your approach is it actually sounds a little bit more like a European approach on patents than the US, because it is incumbent upon a European patent filing to have done and disclosed your own prior art searches to help the examiner figure out things. And of course, it may not be an exhaustive search and so on and so forth. So I've always had an issue with the way the US does it. I was told that because the US was founded by lawyers, they do things like the way the US system is set up to keep lawyers employed. My key questions are two. Number one is uh, a sense of risk of if I disclose things to your engine, have I disclosed things in a way, and is that putting my idea at risk? I'm guessing the answer is no, but I'd love to understand the why not. The other question is, again, because of the international thing, and you did just touch on it in your very good comment, how does your system search internationally in, Uzbekistan or, China for patents?
yeah. So on the security side, yeah, I mean, obviously we have to make it secure, right? There's no so I think one thing that I tell everybody is don't use ChatGPT for this type of work because ChatGPT is taking your data. I mean, it will get trained on. So
Mhm.
now that doesn't mean that it's going to get disclosed, right? And most softwares are actually like unless you read their privacy policy or they specifically say that they don't train on your data, they will train on your data. And so it's important that you pay for at least ChatGPT. Even the paid version of ChatGPT takes your data for training, but that's a separate. But yeah, so we don't use. That's part of why we don't use ChatGPT, even though the developer version doesn't take your data. I don't know. Their practices are a little bit on the shadier side for our taste. So we use other providers that are, Anthropic, for example, doesn't train on your data, even if you're using it for free. And so that they have better practices in that sense. So we've chosen providers based on their practices. Obviously, we need their infrastructure to support this, and then all the data is. I mean, it's a standard encryption processes, right, in transit and at rest, and it's all AWS based. So it's in a relatively secure environment. I mean, there's things that we can't protect against, like when you send an email, if someone's staring at your screen, they're going to be able to see it. And I think those things. I mean, it depends on how deep you want to go in the cybersecurity stuff. I mean, Hosse's on the call, but Stefano, my colleague, was from the Department of Defense, so you can get as strict as you want. I think we're on the reasonable side, where like if you're sending it, if you're okay sending it via email and text and other things, you should be okay with sending it through our platform. And yeah, we don't train. The risk on training on the data it's not necessarily that ChatGPT is going to disclose it. The problem is they could train a model that could disclose it to somebody, right? And that's really the risk. And it's a probability thing. I mean, it's not, it's whether it makes it to the weights and whether those weights eventually print it out in a specific token structure. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it will, pop it and send it to somebody else. But it's a risk that could happen, and it happens, right? I mean, it's designed to learn from you. On the other countries question, so currently the deep search only supports U.S. patents. We're expanding to U.S. patent applications, but U.S. granted patents from the last 20 years. And that's to allow you to do a freedom to operate search in the U.S., which is kind of the market that we're targeting. So we delineated, a useful set of the database that we think is, at least a starting point for us to get started. It costs a lot of money and time to actually do all these calculations. But there's really nothing preventing us from going to other countries. I mean, it's the same. It's the good thing about patents is they're very structured. So they're all very standardized and they all have the same sections and they're all written in a very similar way. So we can recycle the infrastructure that we have for other patents. If you go to Uzbekistan and other places, it becomes, it all depends. It's like a bell curve, right? Like you want to capture it's like the easiest thing that most people will use. The Indian Patent Office, for example, every patent is in a PDF in a database. It's not searchable right now, like from Google Patents, for example. You can't search on it because it's not digitized. And so you have to go to the Indian patent. So for us, that's like a no-go, right? So it's like, we're not going to put in the time and effort to do that. We could, because we have the OCR set up. So in theory, we could download the entire Indian patent database, put it through an OCR system, which is pretty robust, and then calculate it. But the gain there, I mean, if I want to make it affordable to you, that's not going to be affordable, right? Like someone's going to have to pay for that at some point. So if I'm paying for it now, I'm going to charge you for it later. And so we're trying to see, okay, well, if nobody else can search Indian patents, then let's not get in there, right? We're not competing against people who can do that. We're not an Indian patent search engine or an Uzbekistan patent search engine. Let's let those offices modernize their systems, right? Like the US did. At some point, the US had to scan all these patents and make them, electronically readable, and the EPO had to do the same thing. So at some point, the Indian Patent Office hopefully does the same thing. The good thing on languages is for the popular languages like Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, French, German, English, these models can read them easily. So you can actually, in our chat, one thing that I found like a long time ago, actually, I was interacting with a patent, and it was a Japanese patent. And what I didn't know is when I actually opened it, because you can open it from our viewer, it was all in Japanese. And I had been asking questions about it, and I had no idea that it was in Japanese. And then I looked at it, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, I've been doing all these things in Japanese, and I didn't even know, right, until I clicked open. And then what I had to do is I had to check that it was doing it right, because I couldn't read the Japanese version of it. So I had to go to the translation and see, okay, well, the model is actually doing it right. But I had to, I mean, it was really funny. I mean, because I'm Spanish, I can do it in Spanish. So I checked a bunch of Spanish patents to see that it could actually read them, and it can. So I think from an infrastructure side, it's easy. On our side, from an operational standpoint, it's complicated for specific jurisdictions, and then it's complicated in terms of cost because it's a lot of effort to do this. So we're going to do probably US first, US patent applications right now. We're working on that, and then PCT, and then EPO. And then China, Japan, whatever. I mean, those will come on, but I think that will be the natural order of things.
So the next question I have for you is, you're a startup. When were you founded?
About a year ago.
Yeah. About a year ago. And what is your biggest challenge, and how can this group help you?
The biggest, it's I think figuring out a revenue model. Honestly, I mean, it's hard to know how to charge for this thing, right? Like, do we charge per credit? Do we charge a subscription? Like, it's really hard to know how we're going to charge. I think the problem with, I think, the space we're operating in is someone like Jose is a good example. Like, he may need a patent, 1 month of the year, and he's going to work on it during that month. But do I lock him in for a yearly subscription that serves him no purpose, right? I mean, it's really hard to try to sell somebody on recurring revenue when they don't have a recurring need for your service. And so that is one of the challenges that we faced. That's why, we're trying to target lawyers and attorneys, because they do have a recurring need for it and they're high utilization users. So they're going to pay more into the system. But, I'm coming from the innovator side. I want to support that group because that's the group that I understand. And that's, I think if we elevate everybody's knowledge of IP, we're going to get better IP, better, interactions with lawyers. I think generally, like, that's where I'm coming from. So that is one, is the revenue model. Now we've explored, and I can throw out ideas of what we've explored based on what we've seen out there, which may be interesting for the group, just as a, how is AI being priced? But there's subscriptions, right? And subscriptions, the problem they have is if you use them a lot, you have to put caps, because if you use it a lot, it's going to cost us more money than you're paying for it. If you're paying $100 a month and you do 20 searches, 20 simple searches, not even the advanced ones, I've already lost money on you. So like I can't, and then you could run them in parallel. So you could really ruin me within like a week. And so that's, we have to cap it in some way if we're doing a subscription service. I don't think it resonates with this group, for example, having a subscription service. Other ways that people are pricing it is per token. So as the more you use it, the more, you're paying for consumption. But it's really hard for people to relate what is a token and why am I spending money on this? And then maybe you get an error and you're like, well, I just paid a lot of money for this mistake, for something that I didn't want, right? I just printed a whole draft of something that wasn't what I was asking for. And I just spent $3 on this. So I think that may alienate some people. What we're aiming for right now is actually per hour. So the goal is making a patent assistant. And so from the moment you log in and you send your first prompt to the moment you log out with your last prompt, with like a 10-minute buffering, timeout in case you just left it on so that it doesn't charge you forever if you just left your computer on, right? So we'll have to engineer, but we think that's the easiest because it's really easy to track timestamps, bill those timestamps, and then add some protection mechanism so that it doesn't charge you forever if you forgot your computer on. So I think that's what we're aiming for. And then the final version is per service. So you do a search, you pay this much. You perform a draft, you pay this much. And so each interaction is what we would charge, and that actually kind of makes us the most money, because you don't want to spend 10 hours searching for a patent, but you may pay us $100 for it. And so, it seems like and the search doesn't take an hour, right? And so if you're paying us by the hour, you're paying us by the token or whatever, we're not making as much money. So it seems like the transactional part is the easiest one for us, or at least makes us the most money. But again, it really, we haven't figured it out. Edward, I'm happy to hear your suggestions.
Actually, I do have a suggestion, and it actually was another question of mine, which is, again, it feels to me like what your idea and your product is could seriously disintermediate a lot of patent lawyers and how much they charge, as you were referring to in your presentation. But you're absolutely right. They are the logical people who should be the big, heavy users. So here's two things. One, how do I know whether my lawyer is actually overcharging me? Because now they're using your system, but they're still billing me loads of hours, A. B, my idea for you is small companies like us, maybe you charge us $500, but if we then get our lawyers using and subscribing for your service, we get reimbursed. So we have an incentive to basically become your sales force.
Yeah, I'm gonna write.
So,
Write that one down.
so one thing that I would add, Edward, is how many people on this call have ever successfully sold anything to a law firm? Because I've been selling technology and information for many, 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 many years, and I can tell you that is one group of people that is averse to spending money on technology. Averse. And when they do it, they insist that there be a way to bill it back to the client automatically so that they have automatic bill back to the client. And I think you're right that it does undermine something that they're charging a lot of money for, which is to do it manually. I'm not saying that okay, I didn't mean to slam lawyers, although I did. My purpose here was to say that is a very hard sell. And so
But
I think you're right in that focusing on the people on this call, focusing on the people who are advising the clients, who are going to them and saying, I'm not a patent expert, but I know somebody who can help you at a very reasonable fee, get your footing and determine what you need to spend on a patent attorney. I think that would be a reasonable collaboration. What the revenue sharing model is, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, all of the patent attorneys I know, part of their expertise is their knowledge of how to interrogate all of these, various databases of patents and so on and so forth. And you go to 3 different lawyers and you get 5 different answers, kind of thing, because they're all going and every one of them will give you every caveat that says this is based on our searches. Our searches may not be complete, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah, there's always a disclaimer. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but they do use technology. I'm pretty sure LexisNexis is
Yeah.
paid for by a lot of law firms.
It's
So,
expensive too. Yeah.
Yeah. So they do. And like you say, what I wouldn't want Ignacio and his folks to do is be out of pocket. That's why I'm saying we would have to pay you something. And then, for us, $500 is $500. And if we think it's good and then we show it to our lawyers, we might get a rebate out of that $500 that we paid. But if the lawyers never take it, then he's not out of pocket. Right?
Yeah.
But if it is as good as you say, and I don't doubt that it is, then you will get a heavy user out of that relationship. Once that's done once, then that law firm is already a customer. So this can't last forever either, right?
Yeah.
But it does create an incentive for more and more law firms to take it up if it's good. Because then again, Sean, you've got and the sell to the law firms is they'll get more billable hours in each day, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll just have to find other ways to bill the hours.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Jose had put in the comments, AI won't take your job. People who use it will. That is a good segue into a larger discussion, which around digital transformation, around artificial intelligence, around the value of human expertise. And these are all themes that I've been exploring and been sort of dedicating myself to recently because I work with experts and I believe in the experts that I work with. And I believe that they have something to offer the world that AI alone does not have. However, I think that the challenge for us, many of us in our later years in life, in particular, is embracing that change and being open to the idea of doing things differently and saying, I can be more productive if I pick up this tool, and this tool to do what I want to do. However, I think that we're also at risk of creating this smorgasbord of tools that everyone is expected to master. And I think that we need to find a balance where we're able to elevate the value of expertise in each of our areas and validate carbon-based intelligence um, in with the same enthusiasm that we're validating artificial intelligence. And so I would, say, yes, this is all wonderful. I love all the tools that are out there. I think that this is fantastic. And given that nearly everyone on the call was 5 or 6 or lower in terms of their knowledge of patents, I would think that there would be a lot of partnership opportunities or at least conversation opportunities for how you could partner with Ignacio on exploring new possibilities. Does that make sense? Or have I stopped making sense?
It makes sense.
Yep, makes sense.
Sure.
So
we'll end up adding value to our clients when we make recommendations of other people who are doing great things. And so, like this sort of thing is going to be valuable to pretty much, at least for those of us who are service providers on this call. Most of us have startups in particular as clients. And I know I'll definitely be recommending this. think Victoria has a question though.
Does she?
I actually had a comment. So I went back up to my comment that I made when Ignacio was speaking, that I agreed with him as far as searching in the patent, and then you were all speaking about patent attorneys. And so as a writer and being familiar with the Office of Copyright, that's how I agreed with him, because there's so many variables and so many moving walls when you're looking at a patent, and especially today in today's technology, when you're speaking of AI, but don't get me started on AI. There's a lot of different variables with AI. I do agree with him in that sense. It's almost like doing your homework. And if you have this attorney that says, well, you know what, we looked in this end and we think that that's what you should go with, or like to Sean's end, and saying there's another attorney and another attorney, you kind of have to reach out and do a little bit of your own research and then decide which one kind of fits the core of what I'm looking for. Like I said, to me, there's a lot of moving walls in this, and a lot of variables. So, patent attorneys, yes, they're necessary, and, just kind of do a compare and contrast. That's just my opinion.
Thank you for that. I wanted to give Athena a minute to remind everybody from last week's call. I don't know how many of you were here last week for Labyrinth.ai, and they're forming a foundry group to help them develop products, and this is an interesting collaboration opportunity. Athena?
Hi. So for those of you who were here, we had given you a Typeform link, and we found out it only allowed a limited amount of people to respond. So if you were not able to respond, we put in the chat a new link. And even if you were able to respond, just if you still are interested to double check that we got your information, if you don't mind resubmitting, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll also put my email in the chat if anyone has any further questions.
About what time did you put in the chat? There's a lot there.
I just put it back in again.
Okay.
Yeah, I realize that too. I'm like, I don't want everyone to scroll through. So I just put the form link in there again, and then my email address if you have any questions.
Thank you, Athena. So I wanted to let everyone know that next week the plan is to have two women from different companies, both very large medtech companies, share their perspective on working for large medtech companies, team building within leadership. And I think the thing that attracted me about this is that a lot of product and service providers view the top 20, top 50 medtech companies is like, wow, if I got them as a client, my life would be, set. And my experience has been that's not always the case. And so what is kind of myths and realities of large medtech is the working theme for next week. It may change a little bit depending on the conversation that I have with the speakers following this call, but they're both excellent, and I encourage you to attend. On a related note, we're building out the calendar 2-3 months in advance. So if you would like to be on the speaking calendar, please reach out to me. You should reach out to me through LinkedIn or email. Put my email in the chat here. And anybody that on this call that has not joined MedTech Leading Voice Exchange, please do so today. We're about a third of the way to our goal, and we have not done a single email. But we are going to be doing a masterclass in about 2 weeks, 2 weeks from yesterday, on this whole world that's shifting around us and how to position ourselves as product and service providers so that we don't become extinct.